Welcome back, Irish fans, to Breaking Down Braves Boys podcast. Tomorrow, I guess tomorrow when you see this, Notre Dame Wake, first game of the ACC tournament, and we're here to preview it. And I guess Jake and I will talk about FSU later in the episode, but for now, we got Connor O'Neill on. He covers Wake Forest. You might recognize him from a while back. You want to introduce yourself and kind of tell him about yourself before we get into it?
Yeah, so I'm Connor O'Neill. I've covered Wake basketball. This is my fourth season really being on the beat. I used to be with Winston-Salem Journal, and now I'm kind of on my own with a Substack and still pretty dialed in and credentialed to all the home games and to the tournament. So,
For sure. I guess you're pretty close to the tournament, so that kind of leads into my first question. I think there's going to be some fans because I was trying to get in there, but school obviously screwed that up. Do you think that'll help them at all, or do you think it's more of a UNC Duke thing in Greensboro?
yeah, I mean, my understanding with the capacity limits is like it won't be more than 4,000 people, so the noise element won't be nearly the factor that it would be if it was, full blast crowds in there. And yeah, typically in Greensboro, you're going to get a massive Duke following and a massive Carolina following. Uh, NC State, if they're good, they'll land somewhere in between those two. You can get more State fans than Duke fans every once in a while. And then you have the schools that travel well, Notre Dame to a little bit of an extent, and then Virginia with their rise, Virginia Tech travels well because Blacksburg's about a 2-hour drive from Greensboro. Syracuse has a massive alumni base, so it's smattering, but yeah, it's Duke and Carolina, and then everybody else really.
Yeah, I don't think there would have been too many people there in a normal year anyway for a Tuesday night Wake Forest Notre Dame game. I was there at the BC one last year, and it was pretty much empty. So I guess we'll move on now. Um, I don't remember hearing, but generally at this point in the season, especially this year with the bubbles and guys having to get tested like a couple times a week, most of these teams in positions like Wake Forest have kind of packed it in. Have you got that impression from them, or are they really still locked in trying to make a run here?
Yeah, so if you had asked me this 2 weeks ago, I probably would have said yes. They played a stretch where they took Florida State down to the wire. They really should have beaten Florida State. They gave up a last minute or last second game tying layup to Scotty Barnes. And that would have been a win at Florida State. Would have been huge for Wake. And they didn't get that done and went to overtime and lost there. And it was like they were just shot by a sniper. They went down for 4 games in a row and just played with low energy. They got down early and never picked themselves up. It was Duke, NC State, Clemson, and Virginia Tech. So they're playing good teams. It's not like they had a BC in there or a Miami, but they weren't competitive at all. And what really hurt was some of those teams they were competitive with the first time around playing them this season. And then the second time around, it was a completely different Wake team. They looked not even a step slow. It was more like 2 steps slow. But they've picked it up. The last 2 games have both been losses. They're on a 7-game losing streak, but at Pitt and then home against Georgia Tech, they were at least they had some energy to them. They made some runs. They looked a lot more like the team from January and into mid-February that really you wouldn't say that they were a difficult matchup for anybody in the conference, but they were a team that you knew that you were going to have to play a pretty good game to beat. They were going to make you play well to beat them. Kind of the exception of that was the Notre Dame game the first time around. That was kind of the anomaly for Wake at that point. Like, they had played everybody else so tough, and they had gotten a few conference wins, and then they just had this stretch that they seem to have emerged from now. But yeah, they've like I said, to sum things up, they've gotten back to looking the way that they at least could challenge some teams, could make things difficult, could kind of muddy up the game. Wake doesn't do anything very aesthetically pleasing. I mean, when their threes are going in, their threes are going in, but that's every team in the country. When they're making shots, it all looks great. Wake doesn't really do anything other than that very well. It's just a matter of, they've been muddying games up the last two games, and that was when they were really good in January and February.
For sure. That kind of leads into my next question. Notre Dame really kind of ran. I wouldn't say they ran Wake out of the gym, but it wasn't a super competitive game. Has anything changed since we last talked? I guess it would be late January, early February.
No, I mean, I think you could say that Notre Dame ran Wake out of the gym, and I think Steve Forbes would agree with that. I mean, if I remember correctly, it was like a 3-point game at halftime, and the only difference was a long three by Trey Wirtz right before the buzzer, and it was kind of one of those muddy games that I talked about. But talking to Forbes after the game, he was pretty adamant that they were lucky to even be in the game at halftime. They had just done so many things wrong in that game, and they had such poor energy to begin with. And I think Notre Dame started 0 for 7 on threes in that game and wound up 10 for 23. So they made 10 of their last 16. And he really felt like that Notre Dame should have hit threes early in the game. They just missed open shots. So that was really that kind of served as a wake up call. And then the games after that, like they went to Boston College and won a game, which, I mean, Wake Forest has won like 9 ACC road games in the last like 11 and a half years. It's this absurd stat where they're something like 9-94 in their last 103 road games in the ACC. So that kind of Forbes blasted them in the post game. I mean, that was probably his harshest post game of the season. He told us that the team was infected with the disease of me, and that they were selfish and that they didn't play well on the defensive end if they weren't hitting shots. They had too many individual players that did that, and that, it's his job to root that out of the program and get them playing to his image. And then we saw him play to his image. Like I said, they beat Boston College. They took Florida State down to the wire, and then it just set in, whether it was fatigue or whether it was just, we should have beat Florida State and got down on themselves and let that Florida State game beat them for the rest of the season. It's probably a combination of factors, but that first Notre Dame game, it served as a little bit of a wake-up call, and they corrected some things, and then it fell off the cliff after the Florida State game.
Sounds pretty familiar to what happened in Notre Dame season, so definitely can relate with you there. But I forgot to ask you this the first time, but is there any matchup that you really like with these two teams for Wake Forest, or anything that you're concerned about in terms of personnel and kind of how Wake matches up?
I mean, in the first matchup, I thought Nate Laszewski was going to have a really good game. He had been playing really well up to that point. I think he was their leading scorer. I'm not sure if he still is, but then all of a sudden they get on the court and it's Juwan Durham who's out there dunking everything, and I think he had 4 blocked shots. And I sent a tweet that was like, if Notre Dame plays Wake Forest anymore this year, then Jordan Cornett's going to be worried about his blocked shots record for Notre Dame. So I'm not going to tell you that I know how many more he needs to catch Jordan, but Juwan Durham was just a grown man inside. And Wake, the cupboard was pretty empty. I don't think that's any disrespect. One of their best players went to Kentucky. One of their best players went to Michigan with Olivier Sarr and Sean D. Brown. This is a rebuilding program. And so Wake only has one big man. When they played the first time around, Steve Forbes was trying to get what he could out of Emmanuel Okpomo, a freshman. I think in the first game, he had 4 fouls in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. He's so raw, and he might have played in 1 game or 2 games since that first Notre Dame game. They basically pulled the plug on him, and just, it's almost like he's been redshirting for the past month. And so that leaves Wake with one big man, with Odi Aguama. And Odi has a good high motor. He's energetic. He's bouncy. He's very athletic, but he's limited. He's a sophomore. He's still kind of raw. He takes way too long on his post moves to kind of get to where he needs to be, and it's pretty easy to read where he wants to go. And when you're going up against a guy like Jawan Durham, I think he's a fourth-year guy.
Fifth year, yeah.
Yeah, that's just not going to be a matchup that you win very often. So I would anticipate him having another pretty big impact on this game.
For sure. I think Durham, if that's the game, I think Durham got snubbed out of a fifth block also. So I guess, but in that also that freshman, he learn how to get 4 fouls and a half from Olivier Sarr? Because I don't think I've never seen that as much as I did with him.
No, they wouldn't have overlapped. But yeah, I was shocked when he went back in there with 3, and then he got the 4th, and it's like, what do you expect? He already had 3.
Sure. So I got 2 more for you. What do you think Wake has to do to win this game? I know the first time I think there was a big emphasis on shooting because they can't do much else. Is it more of the same?
Yeah, it's pretty much that. I mean, Wake has to hit 3-pointers to win. They hit 13 against Florida State and still lost that game. The win against Pitt was their first ACC win, and really Pitt's probably the best team that they beat this year, given the other 2 wins came against BC and Miami. And against Pitt, Ishmael Massoud made 8 3-pointers by himself, and I think they wound up with something like 13 or 15 in that game. So, yeah, there's one category to really pay attention to with Wake, and it's how many threes they're making. Some teams that they've played recently have been able to take the 3-pointer away, and Wake is so devoid of guys that can even get to the rim, and then the guys that can get to the rim get their shots blocked an awful lot. I mean, Wake is last in the country in offensive block percentage on KenPom, I think by like a percentage point and a half. I mean, it's a massive gap between them and the next worst team. They've got to hit from the outside. It's just clear cut, plain and simple, cut and dry, whatever you want to call it. It's so clearly vital to them winning.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, a lot of the bottom feeder teams kind of rely on that, and I guess that's why we see upsets in March Madness, which makes it fun. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But before I let you go, you got a prediction for this one?
You asked me this last time, and I told you I didn't want to give you a winner prediction. I'll say this. I think that Wake is just about shot. I think that they went 33 days between playing games. They basically lost all of December. They went 3 weeks without being able to even work out. We've heard on the ACC teleconference throughout the year when teams are going on these pauses, like Mike Young was still able to practice with 6 guys in Virginia Tech's latest pause. Wake Forest, when they went on pause in December, they had 0 practice-eligible players. Nobody 1 through 15 on the roster could even work out. So it's just it put Wake behind the 8 ball from the start. They were already going to be behind there because of the rebuilding program aspect of things. And I think they really played with a lot of energy, and they played with a lot of resiliency in January and February because, they were coming out of it. They had some adrenaline boost. They saw that they could play with some teams. And then I think the last 7 games, really the last 6 games in the overtime period against Florida State, it's a cliff dive. There's nice ways to put it, and then there's the reality of it. And so I think that if Wake has anything left in the tank, this is the game they empty it. I think that's the only way they win, is to empty the tank now. Don't worry about, trying to play Carolina on Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, which is really going to start at like 9:30. And
yeah, exactly.
So I think whoever wins this game, well, let me put it this way. I think if Wake wins this game, Wednesday night will be a foregone conclusion. I think if Notre Dame wins this game, they've probably got a chance to beat Carolina because Carolina's been such a Jekyll and Hyde team. It'll just be a matter of how much they have left if that's where they go.
Agreed. I think we all know who UNC's rooting for in this one. But
yeah,
that's all I have for you. Hopefully this isn't the last game preview of the season, but if it is, as a good guest to end off on. So thank you for coming on, and maybe we could do this next year with a better Wake Forest and maybe a better Notre Dame team. All right, so now we've talked to Connor O'Neill about Wake Forest, brought Jake on to talk about FSU, but before we do that, Jake, you want to give your thoughts on the Wake Forest game just generally and maybe a prediction?
Yeah, I would like to see it go like last time, really. That really was a pretty dominant second half, and I mean, it just really not a lot of players on Wake Forest really scare me a lot. I think it's just not a very good team. It's probably the worst team in the league besides BC, although we saw how that went for us. But, if we can beat Wake Forest, move on to play, it's a North Carolina, I would believe.
Yeah, UNC, and then Virginia Tech after.
Yeah, and then Virginia Tech, then it's probably FSU after that. But let's cross that bridge when we get there. I mean, I would like it to be like last year's ACC tournament game, just an easy game. Goes easy, we get the win, we move on. Let's play the second game this time. I just hopefully not too stressful of a game.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't think we wanted to touch on that too much because I'm about to do a segment tomorrow about Wake Forest, and that's not a game that should be overly complicated. If they come out like they did against BC or NC State, then we have an issue, but I feel like they're going to come out with a lot more intensity with the season on the line and after that big win against FSU. So I guess going into FSU, what are your initial thoughts about it? I have a ton of notes about this, so we can go over this for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us expected that. But, when they got up to that big start, I'm like, yeah, they're playing for the coach, I feel like. And I feel like they're playing for Jack Nolan as well. I mean, that was great to send them out that way. They really dominated the first half, and we all knew the run was coming in the second half. Everybody knew it. We knew it. The players knew it. Mike Bray knew it. It was just about how do you stop that run? Florida State made a bunch of big runs, but we just held them up we had our backs up against the wall really, but we held back and we stopped the run, and we even had our own run at the end. We won by 10. I mean, we're down. It was down to 4 with 2.5 minutes left, and we outscored them by 6 the rest of the way. I don't even know if they scored the rest of the way. I think they did really well to finish off the game. It's just something a quality this team has not really had this season that often. Because we've had all these runs and happen against us, and it didn't. We lost because of it. The only one I can remember where we fought back at the end was against Miami, and that's not the greatest of opponents. So to do that against number 11 in the country, get the win over number 11 in the country is huge. I think last year, the second FSU game, we kind of forgot about the significance of beating such a good team because the regular season didn't mean much. But, when you're playing for pride, that does matter. I mean, you are looking to get out of a mental block that is cleared for the future. So it does help you to get the kind of win. I mean, it was pretty big. I think Hub had a huge game. I think Cormac Ryan, I love what he showed. He has a lot of grit, a lot of hustle and fight that this program has really been lacking in this, I guess, sort of a dark stretch ever since, all the Elite Eight players left in both 2015 and 2016. I think with Bonzi, it kind of really left the grit. We had good players. We had TJ, we had Mooney, we had, you name it. But I think Ryan just showed a lot of fight and hustle, grit, determination, a lot of dog in him. We really need it. So I was impressed by him. I think he's going to be a very good player for us next year. I think he's going to win that guard spot next to Hub. I was impressed with him. And Goodwin had a solid game. I would say too. So I think a very good game.
Yeah, for sure. I have a lot to talk about, but first, I guess I'll kind of go off what you said earlier, just about getting over the hump. They haven't really done it much, and I think this is a game that I wouldn't say it's program changing right now, but if you see in November, if they go out and beat 2 or 3 ranked teams in the Maui Invitational, or if they go get a non-conference win against Kentucky, they'll probably be ranked by then again. I think this is a game that you look back at and you're like, wow, they really had a turning point here. They beat a team that's better than them on every level. I think we can agree. They're not super consistent. That's not the best game Florida State's played this year for sure. But that's a team going into that game, I was comfortably picking them to go to the Elite Eight. And with how bad college basketball is this year, I could have seen them go into the Final Four if they caught Michigan or Illinois. So it's just really impressive that everything Leonard Hamilton threw at them and all the length Florida State has, all the ball pressure they put on Prentice Hub, Notre Dame still found a way to do it. And even with the run, I think we all knew that it was coming for sure. Bray constantly talks about combating runs and how teams are never going to shoot that poorly for a whole game. I think at halftime I was really thinking about, man, are they going to be able to stop this? And somehow they did. So I think this could really be a turning point for the program if they can capitalize on it. Maybe even this week if they can find a way to knock off a ranked team. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I would also say, maybe a detractor would say, okay, Notre Dame didn't have anything to play for. And, there is, I wouldn't say full truth, but I will say they didn't have as much as normal to play for. I will admit that. But even if they didn't have everything to play for, who had a lot to play for? Florida State. They had an ACC regular season title on the line, and they lost it. They lost it because of Notre Dame. And Virginia's won the ACC regular season because of that game. So, they had a lot to play for, and we still beat them. I mean, the team played with a lot of energy, a lot of determination. You want to see more of that, really. And I hope we can see that this week.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think this one was for Bray. And a lot of people or a lot of teams around the country, if you listen to anything about national college basketball, you'll hear about, oh, this team's given up. This team, they just want to check out. They want to go out again. They don't want to get COVID tested every week. It's a rough season. And Notre Dame could have easily checked out. It seemed like they had the past 2 games, but I think it's a testament to the culture and the kind of people in this program that they were able to come out and play with energy and play with some swag too. It's one of the first times we've seen that this season. It seems like these guys were really way more confident than I've seen them all year. They had some fire in them, like you had with Cormac Ryan. Like a lot of guys on the team, we haven't seen that from this year, but Cormac Ryan and guys like Nick Jogo really provided a spark in that game. So I was really happy with that. And I was also happy with the way they won. It wasn't one of those games that we've seen in the past where Notre Dame just outshoots the other team and beats them. That's how they typically beat better teams if they do beat a better team. They just flat out outplayed them, really. They beat everything FSU threw at them. They went to the basket better. Somehow they beat a Leonard Hamilton team on the boards, a team with guys that are 6'8", have 30 or 40 pounds on Jawan Durham. Got to the line 34 times. Well, for 34 shots, maybe they didn't get there 34 times, but 5 guys in double figures, and Durham had 9. Durham had a really good night on the boards too, with 9 boards. It's just, I think that was probably their best all-around performance of the year, and it was really encouraging to see that they didn't just outshoot them, because that's how they beat good teams in the past, and that doesn't always work. So, anything else on?
No, I think you summed up well. Very good win.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I have a little bit more from this weekend. A little bit more under the radar. The commits both won sectional championships. JR, I forget the score and his stats weren't out there. I tried to get them. But they pulled off a sectional championship, beat 2 decent teams, a team that had a better record than them, and we still have some other stuff to cover.
No, I think you summed up well. Very good win. Kenny.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I have a little bit more from this weekend. A little bit more under the radar. The commits both won sectional championships. JR, I forget the score and his stats weren't out there. I tried to get them, but they pulled off a sectional championship. Beat two decent teams, a team that had a better record than them in the championship, and then Marion, who they lost to earlier in the year behind a 40-point JR performance. I'll go over some of JR's accolades from this year.
Didn't he have the 18 and 12?
That was the semifinal game. I couldn't get his stats for the final, but NIC. This is JR's accolades from this year: NIC champ, NIC regular season MVP, NIC first team, St. Joe single season scoring record, St. Joe all-time leading scorer, and he's gonna probably break the county record on Wednesday. I don't know. I wish I got his scoring numbers from Saturday, just so I could see how far off he was. But he was 64 away going into Friday. He had 18 on Friday, and then I assume somewhere around the 20s. So he definitely should get it on Wednesday, and that's a heck of a high school career if you ask me. I don't think you could really ask for anything more except like a state championship, but that's really impressive. And then Blake, his team pulled off a huge upset against a team they got blown out by earlier in the year. Now they're regional champs also. I don't think anybody around the Indiana high school basketball scene would have thought that Riley was winning sectional titles. So great for Blake and his team. He was also first team and a champ. And then the thing I was most impressed with was Riley still found a way to win without Blake playing well. So that was really encouraging to see because Blake, he didn't shoot the ball very well, had 16 points, which isn't bad, but it's not great for him. But what I really liked was that Blake didn't shoot them out of the game. We've seen him do that a bit in the past. And I like that I wasn't able to watch the game, but I assume since they won and he only had 16 that he was able to take kind of a back seat and let them run through their sets and generate offense in other ways. And that's something he's going to really need to do at Notre Dame because he's not going to step in and be the number one option. So really encouraging to see there. Jake, any thoughts on the commits? I don't think you were able to watch any of the games this weekend either, but really encouraging.
But I did notice that he's 64 points away from the record, and then he's 49 points away from Demetrius Jackson in second place. So I feel like, if we can have two of the top three, that's pretty cool. The other guy is at Loyola right now, it seems like. And
yeah, Demezy Henderson.
Indiana. But, yeah, I mean, that's great to see. I can't wait to see it. I think they will outperform their recruit rankings. I think they're two freshman contributors. I think they're minutes players. I think, if you can have the athleticism of Blake, which the program is really needed, and then, just the scoring touch of JR, those skill sets are going to play as freshmen. I mean, I don't care where you're playing it. Even if it's a big jump to the ACC, you can do things with that. I mean, so I'm excited.
Absolutely. So seeing that it's conference tournament week, before I let you go, let's get some predictions for all the main tournaments. Let's go, I guess, Big Ten, SEC, ACC, and then whatever other conferences you want to throw in there. Pac-12, even though they kind of suck. Big 12. What do you got?
For Pac-12, I'll probably have Oregon. Big Ten, I'm going to have Michigan. Big 12, I'm going to have Baylor. ACC, I'm going to have
ACC is really tough this year.
I'm going to have Virginia. I always felt they were the best team all along, so it's not just because they're first now. And then SEC, SEC is a pretty tough one. I'm going to go with Alabama for that because they just impressed me the most. But outside of Alabama, and Arkansas, that conference does not impress me at all. It's just it's not every day you see Kentucky so mediocre, but they are mediocre.
I'm sure the Kentucky fans still think they're somehow making a run. I don't know about that one, but
Boston's playing well.
Yeah, for sure. BJ Boston is playing well. But I guess I'll do mine real quick. Big Ten, Illinois. I think Io is a March player. I know this isn't Notre Dame related, but what's it called? Fun fact: Prentice Hub outscored Io when they played Illinois a few years back. So use that information how you will. That's my Big Ten. Big 12, Baylor, pretty self-explanatory. SEC, I'm going to go Alabama also. ACC, I'm going to do Florida State. I just think if Florida State can play with intensity and get on a run, I don't think there's anybody who can beat them. But if they play like they did on Saturday, there's a lot of teams who can beat them, including Notre Dame. So, was there any others? I don't. Oh, what was
Pac-12?
Pac-12. I'm going to go USC. I haven't watched as much Pac-12 as I want to, but if you got both the Mobleys and then with the Edey guy, I think they're in decent shape. I don't love Oregon or any team in that league for that matter, but conference week is electric. I'm sure everybody we tuned in to all the games, even if Notre Dame's not in it. And I guess that's all we got. Jake, any closing remarks? This might be your last podcast of the regular season, so. Anything else?
That would be the case, seeing as we're up on against the postseason. So go Irishman.
For sure.